The universe is a real bastard. Just when you think it can't get worse, it hands you a fresh roll of cosmic toilet paper to clean up the mess it's just made of your life. That's how the last of Earth's survivors felt as they docked with Etherian, the Xel'Naga's colossal living space station. Once a proud testament to the Xel'Naga's bioengineering prowess, it now played host to the weary, grumbling mass of humanity that hadn't been smart enough, or rich enough, to find a better escape from their dying planet. As the docking clamps latched onto the human refugee ship, the hopeful despair asterisk, a name that probably sounded more profound before the entire crew fell into existential gloom, Captain Theo Hargrove glared at the viewscreen. "What a lovely, organic hellhole," he muttered, rubbing a hand over the stubble that had long since passed for a beard. "Can't wait to see what kind of alien crap's gonna kill us here." Beside him, First Officer Samara Voss snorted. "At least it'll be a change from Earth. Tired of dying from radiation and starvation. Nice to shake things up with some tentacled horror or sentient fungus." Theo chuckled darkly. Always the optimist, Sam. The docking bay was a sprawling, pulsating cavity of flesh and metal, the kind of decor that screamed, "Look, Ma." No interior designers. The Xel'Naga had a way with organic structures that left most humans feeling like they needed a shower and a tetanus shot. As the ramp lowered, a delegation of Xel'Naga awaited them. Tall, elegant figures with features that could only be described as unsettling if one were being polite, which Theo rarely was. Their leader, a lanky specimen named Zoreth, stepped forward, translucent skin glowing with an inner light that probably had something to do with all the bioluminescent fish they ate or whatever. "Welcome, humans," Zoreth declared in a voice as smooth as a politician's, which was to say, oily enough to fry a dozen eggs. "We hope your stay on Etherian will be enlightening." Theo forced a smile. "Yeah, we're just here for the sightseeing and maybe not dying." "Anything we should know before we start enjoying your hospitality?" The word hospitality dripped with sarcasm, like a wet sponge left out in a sandstorm. Zoreth's eyes flicked to the human's gear being unloaded. "Your technology may not be compatible with our systems. The station is sensitive." "Sensitive," Theo repeated. "You mean it's gonna throw a tantrum if we don't play nice with its toys?" Samara gave him a sideways look. "Theo, maybe don't antagonize the people letting us crash on their bio couch." "Just wondering if we're gonna get evicted because our toasters start a war with their furniture," Theo replied. As if on cue, the first signs of trouble began. The moment the humans started unloading, there was a soft whirring sound and the lights flickered like an indecisive disco ball. From somewhere deep in the station, a low rumble echoed, a sound that anyone with a brain would classify as ominous. "That doesn't sound good," Samara noted dryly. "Ah, the sound of impending doom," Theo quipped. "My favorite track." Zoreth frowned, which looked remarkably like a smile if one were upside down and half blind. "We will investigate. In the meantime, perhaps you should refrain from using your equipment." "Did you hear that, folks?" Theo called out to his crew as they bustled about in the bay. "No tech tinkering unless you want to piss off the giant alien jellyfish." The crew, to their credit, did exactly what one expects of stressed, desperate humans, ignored orders and kept on tinkering. It wasn't long before the first real malfunction hit. A panel nearby sparked, emitting a shower of bioluminescent sparks that danced across the floor like drunken fireflies. "Well, that's new," Samara commented, eyeing the light show. "Add pyrotechnics to the list of things that make me want to run back to Earth," Theo sighed, watching the sparks fizzle out harmlessly. Zoreth's expression darkened, a feat considering the Xel'Naga's general lack of facial features. "It appears your equipment is doing more than anticipated." "Yeah, well, we aim to please," Theo said, shrugging. "Or accidentally destroy, whichever happens first." The Xel'Naga delegation watched in what could be interpreted as either horror or digestive distress. Zoreth cleared his throat, or at least made a sound that suggested his throat needed clearing. "We may need to initiate containment protocols," Zoreth announced, sounding rather like someone suggesting a cup of tea during a fire. "Containment protocols," Samara echoed, her voice laced with suspicion. "That doesn't sound ominous at all." "Just a precaution," Zoreth assured, his voice doing little to assuage their skepticism. "Our systems are delicate and we must ensure stability." Theo folded his arms, his expression one of a man who'd just found out his life insurance policy didn't cover acts of alien. "By all means, do what you gotta do, but if this station starts eating people, we're gonna have a serious problem." Samara nudged him. Always with the motivational speeches. Amidst the chaos and technical hiccups, the humans began to explore the station, a sprawling labyrinth of organic corridors and chambers that seemed to pulse with life. The Xel'Naga's architecture was both awe-inspiring and unsettling, like someone had taken a biology textbook and vomited it into a sci-fi fever dream. As they navigated the fleshy halls, the crew couldn't help but make sardonic observations because humor was the only thing keeping them from screaming. "I think I've walked into a giant intestine," one crew member remarked, wrinkling his nose as he poked a wall lightly. "Don't touch anything," Samara warned. "Who knows if it'll sneeze or something?" Theo chuckled. "Or worse, ask for a date." The tension, however, was palpable. Every flicker of light, every hum in the walls could be the precursor to disaster, and the humans were acutely aware of just how precarious their situation was. The Xel'Naga were offering refuge, but there was no telling how long that would last if Earth technology continued to wreak havoc on the station's systems. As they regrouped in a central chamber that looked suspiciously like the inside of a large alien lung, Samara voiced the concern on everyone's minds. "We need to fix this," she said, crossing her arms, "or at least figure out what's causing these malfunctions before they decide we're more trouble than we're worth." Theo nodded. "Yeah, I'm not keen on getting tossed out the airlock." "Can't even remember if I left the iron on." The crew exchanged glances, a mix of determination and gallows humor. They'd survived Earth, they'd survive this too. Hopefully without reducing the station to a quivering pile of goo in the process. The lights flickered again, and somewhere deep within the station, a rumbling sound echoed, louder this time, more insistent. Samara sighed. "I think it's safe to say we've overstayed our welcome in this lung. Let's move before it coughs us out," Theo agreed, leading the way. The humans pressed on, their path illuminated by the station's eerie, organic glow. Each step was a gamble, each door they passed through a potential gateway to disaster, but they had no choice. The Xel'Naga's patience might be vast, but it wasn't infinite, and they couldn't afford to test just how forgiving their hosts were willing to be. As they rounded a corner, they found themselves face to face with another Xel'Naga delegation, this group looking even less impressed than the first, if such a thing was possible. Their leader, a stern-looking figure with the unpronounceable name of Calith, regarded them with a mixture of curiosity and mild disdain. "Your presence is causing disruptions," Calith said, a statement that, given their circumstances, was as unsurprising as it was unhelpful. Theo forced another smile. "We're aware, and we're working on it." "You know, trying not to blow up your station and all." Calith nodded, as if this explanation was sufficient, which it wasn't. "See that you do. The integrity of Etherian must not be compromised." "Funny, I was just thinking the same thing about our own integrity," Theo quipped, earning a chuckle from Samara. They continued their march through the station, each step taking them deeper into the heart of Xel'Naga territory. The humans knew they were on borrowed time, and the station's every flicker and glitch seemed to underscore that fact. As they entered another chamber, this one resembling the interior of some nightmarish sea creature, Theo couldn't help but make another sardonic observation. "Well, at least the view's nice," he said, gesturing to the pulsating walls and the bioluminescent patterns swirling across them. Samara rolled her eyes. "If you like that sort of thing, Personally, I'll take a white picket fence and a lawn any day. Good luck finding one of those out here, Theo replied, his voice tinged with both humor and a hint of melancholy. They pressed on, aware that their time was running out. The Xel'Naga might be patient, but their tolerance had limits, and the humans were pushing them to the brink. It was a race against time to fix their technological blunders before they found themselves hurled back into the void. As they turned another corner, they were greeted by a sight that brought them to a halt. The chamber ahead was in disarray, with panels hanging loose and organic matter seeping through the cracks. "Looks like we've found the source of our problems," Samara remarked. "Or the start of a very bad day," Theo added, surveying the damage. The crew exchanged looks, the weight of their predicament settling on their shoulders like a physical burden. They were out of options and out of time. It was fix this mess or face the consequences. "All right," Theo said, clapping his hands together with a false bravado that fooled no one. "Let's see if we can't unfuck this situation." And with that, they set to work, each of them aware that this might be their last chance to prove themselves more than just a nuisance to their alien hosts. The fate of humanity, or at least this small, stubborn remnant of it, hung in the balance, and failure was not an option. The lights flickered once more, and somewhere in the distance, the station groaned like a creature in distress. "Here's hoping this place doesn't decide to eat us," Samara muttered as she joined Theo in the task of setting things right. The future was uncertain, the challenges daunting, but they pressed on, driven by the indomitable human spirit or sheer stubbornness, depending on one's perspective. "Let's make sure our farewell tour doesn't end with a bang," Theo quipped, his words a mix of defiance and determination. And so they worked, amidst the chaos and uncertainty, each step a testament to the resilience of humanity in the face of the unknown. The universe might be a real bastard, but these humans were ready to fight back, one malfunction at a time. The dim, throbbing corridors of Etherian felt like a bad acid trip crossed with a biology lecture, and Captain Theo Hargrove wasn't keen on reliving high school. He trudged forward, trying to ignore the unsettling sensation that the walls were breathing, an illusion that was just a bit too convincing for comfort. "Feels like we're in the belly of something that might decide to digest us," he muttered, kicking at a tendril that curled too close to his boot for liking. "That's encouraging," Samara Voss replied, her tone drier than a martini in a sandstorm. "Maybe it'll burp us back out on Earth, though I'm not sure which is worse." "Earth's probably still on fire," Theo said deadpan. "Tough call." Behind them, the crew of the Hopeful Despair was doing their best to look like they belonged in this pulsing nightmare. It was hard to maintain a sense of decorum when your surroundings seemed intent on merging with you, but they managed, mostly through sheer bloody-mindedness and a healthy dose of sarcasm. "Hey, do you think these walls are, like, sentient?" asked the young engineer, poking experimentally at a fleshy protrusion with a screwdriver. "What if they can hear us?" "Then we're screwed," Theo replied. "Because last I checked, insulting your host's decor wasn't the best way to get on their good side." A few of the crew snorted, and even Samara allowed herself a wry grin. It was a flimsy shield against the rising tension, but it was all they had. They reached a junction where several corridors branched off like veins in a body, each one seemingly identical. Theo hesitated, squinting down the dimly lit paths. So, which way to the nearest existential crisis? Samara consulted the alien map Zoreth had given them, a holographic nightmare of shifting shapes and colors that seemed more interested in giving her a migraine than directions. "Depends. Do you prefer getting lost in the critter's intestines or trying your luck with what looks like a spleen?" "Dealer's choice," Theo shrugged. "Maybe we should have brought breadcrumbs." As they debated the merits of organic GPS, another squad of Xel'Naga passed them, their translucent forms gliding through the corridors with unnerving grace. Their leader, a particularly ethereal-looking specimen named Calith, paused, eyeing the humans with the kind of disdain reserved for moldy leftovers. "The disturbances are increasing," Calith said, their voice smooth as polished obsidian but carrying the weight of a subtle threat. "We require your cooperation to resolve this." "Working on it," Theo replied, plastering on a smile that was more grimace than anything. "It's not like we've got a manual for interspecies tech glitches." Calith's eyes narrowed, or at least Theo assumed they did. "Hard to tell with a face that looked like a jellyfish's bad day. We expect results soon." With that, the Xel'Naga drifted away, leaving the humans to their own devices and growing paranoia. "Nice fella," Samara commented, watching them go. "I'm guessing the words customer service aren't in their vocabulary." "Considering we're the problem, I don't blame them," Theo said. "But we need to buy some goodwill." Fast. They resumed their trek, tensions high and patience thin. It wasn't long before they stumbled into another chamber, this one dominated by a massive, spiraling structure that seemed to pulse with an inner light, a sight both awe-inspiring and unnerving in equal measure. "Looks like we found the station's heart," Samara observed, shading her eyes against the bioluminescent glare. "Or its brain," Theo countered. "You'd think they'd put up a sign." The crew set to work, assessing the damage and looking for any sign of what might be causing their tech to throw tantrums. Amidst the activity, Theo couldn't help but make another sardonic observation. "Remember when our biggest worry was running out of coffee?" "Feels like a lifetime ago," Samara replied, frowning at the tangle of cables and organic strands before her. "Now we're trying to stop a space station from sneezing us into oblivion. One crisis at a time," Theo said, dropping to his knees to help. "Let's see if we can't find a way to patch this mess up." Hours passed in a blur of frantic repairs and muttered swearing, the humans working in tandem amidst the alien machinery. It wasn't pretty and it wasn't perfect, but given their current options, it was the best they could do. "We're not exactly miracle workers," an engineer grumbled, wiping sweat from her brow. "Hope these Xel'Naga don't expect magic." "Not unless they can tell us how to make it," Theo replied, securing a loose panel with more force than finesse. "But maybe we can at least stop things from getting worse." Just as they were starting to see some progress, the lights flickered again, accompanied by a low, ominous rumble that reverberated through the chamber like a giant's groan. "Oh," Samara said, eyes widening. "I don't think the station likes that." "You think?" Theo muttered through gritted teeth. "Let's hope it doesn't decide to redecorate." "With us." Moments later, Zoreth glided into the chamber, his expression as inscrutable as ever. "It seems your efforts are having an effect, positive or negative?" Theo asked, though he had a sinking feeling he already knew the answer. Zoreth hesitated, choosing his words with the care of someone defusing a bomb. "Uncertain. The station's systems are responding, but not as anticipated. We may require additional adjustments." "Great," Theo said, throwing his hands up. "More tinkering, just what I wanted." "We'll get it sorted," Samara assured, her voice carrying the kind of optimism you might find in a condemned man. "Just give us time." "Time is something we do not have in abundance," Zoreth reminded them, his tone carrying the faintest hint of urgency. "We will continue to monitor the situation." As Zoreth departed, Theo exchanged a glance with Samara. "We're running out of chances here, aren't we?" "Pretty much," she agreed. "But when have we ever done things the easy way?" With renewed determination, or maybe just stubbornness, they redoubled their efforts. The Xel'Naga's patience may have been legendary, but even legends had limits, and the humans were determined not to push past them. Several more tense hours passed before they finally stepped back to survey their handiwork. It was a patchwork of human ingenuity and alien tech, a jury-rigged solution that shouldn't have worked but somehow did. "Think that'll hold?" a technician asked, wiping grease from his fingers. Theo shrugged. "If it doesn't, we'll be the first to know." The lights flickered again, but this time the hum that followed was different, not the ominous rumble of impending disaster, but a more soothing resonance, like a sigh of relief from the station itself. "Well, that's new," Samara remarked, cautiously optimistic. "Think we might have actually done it." "I'm not counting any chickens just yet," Theo cautioned. "But maybe we've bought ourselves a little breathing room." As they gathered their tools and prepared to report back to the Xel'Naga, the crew allowed themselves a moment of hope. It wasn't much, but it was something. A small victory in a universe that seemed intent on stacking the odds against them. "Here's hoping this is enough to keep us in their good books," Samara said as they made their way back through the winding corridors. "Or at least off their to eject list," Theo replied with a wry grin. Back in the main chamber they were met by Caliph, who surveyed them with that inscrutable gaze. "You have made progress." "Progress is our middle name," Theo quipped. "First names barely and last names surviving." Caliph's expression didn't change, which Theo took as a good sign. "The station has stabilized, though further observation is required." "Just happy to help," Samara said, her voice carrying a note of relief. "Glad we could avoid turning this place into a light show." As the Xel'Naga continued to monitor the systems, the humans gathered, exchanging weary smiles and claps on the back. They'd faced the unknown and come out the other side, a little battered but still standing. For now, at least, they'd bought themselves some time, a precious commodity in a universe that seemed determined to strip it away at every turn. The future was as uncertain as ever, but they'd take their victories where they could find them. "Looks like we live to fight another day," Theo said, looking out at the vast expanse of Etherian. "Let's hope tomorrow's kinder than today." "Wouldn't hold my breath on that," Samara replied with a smirk. "But hey, stranger things have happened." With the tension easing and the immediate crisis averted, they could afford to relax just a little. It wasn't much, but it was enough. For now. The crew gathered their gear, weary but momentarily relieved from their brush with disaster. The station had stabilized. At least, that was the optimistic interpretation. Theo, ever the cynic, suspected the universe was just biding its time before dropping the next grand piano on their heads. Caliph had drifted off to whatever ethereal corner the Xel'Naga considered home, leaving the humans to their own dubious devices. Theo had a feeling they'd be seeing their ghostly overlords sooner rather than later. "Feels too quiet," Samara muttered, glancing over her shoulder as they trudged back through the Etherians' living corridors. "Like we're in the eye of the storm." "Just waiting for the other shoe to drop," Theo agreed, half wondering if it would come in the form of a boot-sized meteor. Typical Monday. As if on cue, the lights flickered ominously, casting long shadows that danced like the universe was having a laugh at their expense. Theo paused, every instinct screaming that something was about to go horribly, hilariously wrong. "Don't you dare," he warned the station, as if it could understand or cared. "We're not in the mood for a cosmic joke." The station, naturally, ignored him. The floor trembled slightly, and a low hum reverberated through the walls. It was the sort of noise that suggested things were about to get worse in an interesting way. "Think we should have brought a priest?" Samara asked, only half joking. "Unless he doubles as an engineer, I doubt it," Theo replied, scanning the walls like they might suddenly grow fangs. "Let's get moving before it decides to redecorate." They picked up the pace, boots thudding against the organic surface as they navigated the labyrinthine corridors. The walls seemed to pulse with a life of their own, a reminder that the Etherian wasn't just a metal shell. It was alive, in some incomprehensible way. The engineering team had dubbed it the Squid House, and Theo could see why. Their destination was the ship's bridge, a grandiose term for what amounted to a cramped control room crammed with consoles and monitors. Most of the screens were flickering, displaying static or abstract patterns that made Theo's eyes cross. "Lovely, just what we needed," he said, not bothering to hide his irritation. "Looks like the station's got some opinions on interior design." "Think you can do better?" Samara asked, already fiddling with a panel. Theo shrugged. "I was thinking more along the lines of not dying." Aesthetic choices come later. The young engineer from before, a kid named Jax with perpetually grease-stained fingers, was already elbow-deep in a console, muttering to himself. "This place just doesn't want to cooperate, does it?" "Wouldn't be the first," Theo replied. "How's it looking?" Jax made a face as if he'd just bitten into something particularly unpleasant. Like a drunk octopus tried to rewire it. That's comforting, Samara said, leaning in to peer over his shoulder. Any chance of getting it back online, preferably without us becoming part of the decor? Jax shrugged, a gesture that seemed to encompass the general futility of their situation. I'll try. No promises. As the engineer worked, Theo couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The Etherian was a marvel of bioengineering, but it was also a reminder that they were far from home, in a place where the rules of reality seemed to bend just for kicks. Making progress, Calith's voice cut through the tension, smooth and unsettling as ever. The Zelnaga leader had returned, flanked by two of his kind, silent, translucent specters. Theo offered a tight smile. Progress is a strong word. More like holding it together with duct tape and hope. Calith's expression was unreadable, but there was a palpable weight to his presence, like standing in the shadow of a mountain that might decide to move. The disturbances have not ceased. We require a more effective solution. Theo bit back a retort. As much as he wanted to point out that they were doing the best they could with what little they understood, antagonizing the Zelnaga seemed like a poor survival strategy. We're working on it, Samara said instead, her tone carefully measured. Just need to figure out what the station's trying to tell us, or shout at us. Calith nodded slowly, as if considering the depths of human inadequacy. Time is of the essence. Tell that to the station, Theo muttered under his breath before addressing Calith directly. We're on it, and if you have any handy tips for translating angry architectural growls, now's the time. The Zelnaga leader didn't rise to the bait, instead gesturing to the screens. The station's systems are complex. Beyond your current comprehension. Understatement of the century, Jax grumbled from his console, earning a sharp glance from Theo. We're open to suggestions, Theo said, doing his best not to sound like he was begging. Not quite anyway. Calith considered him for a moment, his gaze piercing. There may be a way to interface directly with the station's core. A communication of sorts. Sounds risky, Samara pointed out, ever the pragmatist. Risk is inherent in survival, Calith replied, his voice a cold, smooth current. But it may provide the answers you seek. Right. Because the universe loves to play nice when we ask politely, Theo said, sarcasm dripping from every word. Still, if it's our best shot, we'll take it. Then I shall guide you, Calith said, turning with a graceful motion that seemed to defy physics. This way. Theo exchanged a glance with Samara. Guess we're off to see the wizard, or whatever passes for one in Squid Town. The journey to the station's core was a nerve-wracking affair, the corridors seeming to shift and pulse as if they were walking through a living organism. Theo kept expecting the walls to close in or maybe start singing. Because in a place like this, why the hell not? Think we should have packed a lunch, Samara quipped, trying to lighten the mood as they followed Calith. Theo chuckled darkly. Wouldn't taste right anyway. Something about existential dread really takes the flavor out. They finally arrived at a chamber that made Theo's skin crawl. It was vast and dimly lit, dominated by an enormous pulsing structure that seemed to throb with a life of its own. Wires, or were they veins, snaked out from it, disappearing into the walls. Welcome to the heart of the station, Calith announced, gesturing with a translucent hand. Here we may attempt communication. Theo stared at the alien machinery, half expecting it to sprout eyes and start asking for tea. Looks like something out of a fever dream, or a horror movie, Samara added, barely concealing her unease. If this goes sideways, I'm blaming you, Theo said, stepping forward despite every instinct screaming at him to run. What's the plan? Calith approached the pulsing core, his presence casting odd, shifting shadows. You will place your hand upon the interface, and I will attempt to bridge the gap between our consciousness and the stations. Sounds like the setup to a bad joke, Theo muttered, but he complied, reaching out to touch the core. The sensation was immediate and overwhelming, a rush of alien thoughts and emotions flooding his mind, like trying to drink from a fire hose of incomprehensible data. He staggered, fighting against the urge to pull away. Whoa, Samara said, steadying him with a firm grip. You good? Define good, Theo managed, his voice strained. Feels like I'm trying to have a conversation with God or an angry toaster. Calith raised a hand and the torrent eased, the sensations resolving into something more manageable. You are connected. Now we must find the source of the disturbance. Right? Theo said, trying to focus. Just another day at the office. As they worked, Samara and Jax monitored the consoles, translating Theo's ramblings into something that might resemble useful information. The process was tedious and unsettling, like trying to hold a conversation in a language you barely understood while also getting slapped in the face. Getting anything? Samara asked, her eyes never leaving the flickering screens. Theo shook his head as if that might clear the fog. Bits and pieces, like trying to read a book that's also trying to eat me. Jack snorted, a rare moment of humor breaking through the tension. So, Tuesday then, the room echoed with the station's low hum, a constant reminder of their precarious situation. Theo could feel the pressure building, a sense of urgency that threatened to drown him if they didn't find answers soon. There's something here, he said, focusing on a particularly insistent thread of thought. A rhythm, like a heartbeat gone wrong. Can you fix it? Samara asked, her voice tinged with concern. Theo closed his eyes, reaching out through the connection. I can try, just need to. Adjust the flow. The core pulsed in response, the wires around them shivering like startled snakes. It was a delicate dance, one misstep away from disaster, but when had that ever stopped them? Remind me to put this on my resume, Theo muttered, concentrating with every ounce of willpower. Fluent in alien tantrums. The station seemed to respond, the hum shifting, growing more harmonious. Theo could sense the change, like a puzzle piece clicking into place. Something's happening, Jax announced, tapping furiously at his console. The systems are stabilizing. Good news for once, Samara said, a smile breaking through her usual skepticism. Calith watched with an inscrutable gaze, his presence a constant reminder of the stakes. You have done well. Not dead yet, so I'm counting it as a win, Theo replied, releasing his grip on the core. The room seemed to exhale, the tension easing, but only slightly. We'll keep monitoring, Samara said, already jotting notes for future reference. Just in case the station decides it wants another round. With the immediate crisis averted, they allowed themselves a moment to breathe. It wasn't over, not by a long shot, but they'd bought themselves time, a precious commodity in a universe that seemed determined to strip it away. Think we're out of the woods? Jax asked, glancing at Theo. Maybe, Theo replied, eyeing the pulsing core with a mix of caution and curiosity. But I'd keep the map handy, just in case. As they made their way back through the Etherians' living corridors, Theo couldn't help but reflect on their situation. They'd faced the unknown and come out the other side, a little battered but still standing. For now, at least, they were still in the game. And in a universe that loved to stack the odds, that was something worth holding onto. It wasn't long before the Xel'Naga decided that letting a bunch of humans run around their living station unsupervised was a bad idea. Who would have guessed? So one fine and particularly bleak morning, Theo found himself summoned to a meeting that felt more like a disciplinary hearing. Calith stood at the head of a strange, pulsating table that seemed to quiver with anticipation. Maybe it was excited to witness human incompetence firsthand. Captain Hargrove, Calith began, his voice smooth as ever but with an edge sharp enough to cut glass. Given the recent incidents, we've deemed it necessary to impose certain restrictions on your movement within the Etherian. Theo could almost feel Samara rolling her eyes beside him, a skill she'd perfected to an art form. Restrictions, huh? Because nothing says welcome guest quite like house arrest. Calith's expression didn't change, but Theo swore the translucent skin around his eyes tightened, a Xel'Naga version of a glare. For your safety and the station's integrity, you'll be confined to designated areas unless accompanied by one of us. Great, Theo muttered, because stumbling around a sentient maze wasn't exciting enough. Now we get a chaperone. Samara leaned in, whispering just loud enough for Theo to catch. At least they'll get to enjoy our charming company. We can regale them with tales of Earth's dying gasps. Can hardly wait, Theo replied before addressing Caliph with a forced smile. We'll play by your rules. Just point us to the nearest safe zone. As if on cue, a Zelnaga stepped forward, gesturing for them to follow. They were led through the station, its corridors a dizzying mix of organic and mechanical, always shifting like they were trying to shake off unwelcome guests. Samara, Theo said after a moment, remind me why we're here again, besides the cheap thrill of being alien guinea pigs. Earth's a flaming dumpster fire, remember? Samara responded with a shrug. And apparently the galaxy's only interested in us when we screw things up spectacularly. Ah yes, our winning charm, Theo said as they arrived at a sterile-looking chamber. Home sweet cell. The Zelnaga guide gestured at the room, which was sparse but functional, like a luxury prison. You may access this area freely. Please refrain from exploring. Wouldn't dream of it, Samara deadpanned, watching the Zelnaga depart with a wave that screamed polite dismissal. Once alone, Theo surveyed their new digs. Well, it's not the Ritz, but it'll do. At least the walls aren't trying to eat us. Yet, Samara added, collapsing onto a bench that looked suspiciously comfortable. So what's the plan now, Captain? Theo sat across from her, rubbing his temple. We need to find out more about this place. The Zelnaga claim it's for our protection, but something tells me there's more going on. You're suggesting our ethereal overlords aren't being entirely transparent. Shocked, Samara said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. But how do we dig deeper with a leash around our necks? Creative thinking, Theo replied. And maybe a bit of old-fashioned cunning. Or, Samara said, a wicked glint in her eye, we could just ask the walls what's up. They've been eerily silent, which makes me think they've got something to hide. Theo chuckled, half joking. Because starting a conversation with the architecture has never gone wrong in horror stories. Their banter was interrupted by the young engineer from earlier, Jax, who poked his head in, looking like a kid caught sneaking cookies. Hey, heard we're under lockdown. Quite the welcome party. Yeah, and there's cake later, Samara snorted. What brings you to our humble abode? Jack stepped inside, dropping his voice. I've been poking around and I think I found something. A vulnerability in the station systems. Theo raised an eyebrow. A vulnerability, like a way to exploit it. Possibly, Jack said, excitement bubbling up despite the dire circumstances. I noticed an irregularity in the energy flow patterns. It's almost like there's a part of the station that's disconnected. Disconnected? Samara asked, intrigued. As in off the grid, exactly, Jax nodded, his enthusiasm infectious. If we can access it, we might find out more about how this place ticks, maybe even get some leverage. Theo considered this, a plan forming in his mind. Think you can get us there without setting off alarms? Jax grinned, a mischievous glint in his eye. If the universe loves throwing curveballs, I love hitting them. All right, Theo said, returning the grin. Let's go see what the squid house is hiding. With Jax leading the way, they slipped out of their designated area, using every trick in the book to avoid detection. It was like being back in their academy days of sneaking out for a drink, only with significantly higher stakes. They moved through the corridors, each step a gamble. The station seemed to hum with disapproval, the walls closing in with every wrong turn. Feel like we're swimming with sharks, Samara whispered, her gaze darting around. Squid-shaped sharks. Keep your voice down, Theo warned, though he couldn't help but feel the thrill of the chase. Jax, how much farther? Not far, Jax assured, leading them into a narrow passage that seemed intentionally hidden. Just around this bend, the space opened into a small chamber, dimly lit and humming with an energy different from the rest of the station. Theo could feel it thrumming beneath his skin, a whisper of power lying dormant. This is it, Jax said, eyes wide with awe. The hidden node. Theo approached the console at the center, placing a hand on its surface. An interface flickered to life, displaying a bewildering array of alien symbols. Can you make sense of this? Samara asked, peering over his shoulder. Not yet, Theo admitted, his mind racing. But if we can interface with it, we might be able to access the station's real secrets. Like finding the secret ingredient in a recipe, Jax added. Only the ingredient is alien tech. Or a trap, Samara pointed out, ever the realist. Theo nodded, acknowledging the risk. That's why we tread lightly. But if there's a chance we can get ahead of the game, we have to try. With Jax's help, Theo began inputting commands into the console, each keystroke feeling like a step deeper into the unknown. It was a gamble, but what wasn't these days? The console whirred, lights flickering before a section of the wall peeled back, revealing a hidden compartment filled with strange, delicate machinery. Theo's heart skipped a beat. "Jackpot," he murmured, reaching to examine their find. Samara's voice was a low warning. "Careful, Theo, we don't know what it is." "That's why we find out," he countered, fingers brushing over the controls. The machinery responded to his touch, a holographic display springing to life, casting bizarre reflections around the room. "Looks like a control hub," Jax said, eyes wide. "For what, though?" "Let's find out," Theo said, delving into the interface. Data scrolled across the display, alien and inscrutable, but hints of recognizable patterns showed through. "These look like coordinates," Jax pointed out, pointing to a specific set of symbols, "or pathways of some sort." Theo's mind raced, piecing together the implications. A map. Hidden routes through the station. Samara stepped closer, studying the display. "Routes they're keeping from us, but why?" "Because they lead somewhere the Xel'Naga don't want us to go," Theo guessed. "And that makes it very interesting." The possibilities churned in his mind, wild and dangerous. If they could decipher this map, they might find the leverage they needed. Maybe even a way out if things went south. "Think we can download this?" Theo asked Jax, who was already working his magic. "On it," Jax said, fingers flying over the console. "Just give me a minute." The console whirred, the display flickering as Jax worked. Theo watched, tension coiling in his gut. Every second they lingered increased the risk of discovery. "Got it," Jax announced, pulling a small data chip from the terminal. "All the info's here." "Nice work," Theo said, clapping him on the shoulder. "Now let's get out of here before our absence raises any flags." They slipped back into the corridors, retracing their steps with care. The station seemed quieter, like a beast that had been momentarily satiated. But Theo knew better than to trust appearances. As they neared their designated area, Theo caught Samara's eye. "We're on to something, aren't we?" She nodded, a rare gleam of hope in her eyes. "Feels like it, but we have to play it smart." "Smart's our middle name," Jax quipped, earning a snort of amusement from Samara. "Sure," Theo said, a grin tugging at his lips. "Just don't let the universe hear you say that. It loves a challenge." Back in their quarters, they quickly set to work analyzing the data. Theo felt the familiar buzz of anticipation, the thrill of discovery mixed with the dread of what it might cost them. "These pathways," Samara mused, tracing a finger over the holographic map. "They intersect here beneath the core." Theo leaned in, studying the convergence. "A hidden chamber or an emergency exit." "Could be both," Jax suggested. "If the Xel'Naga are hiding something, it'll be in a place like that." Theo nodded, mind racing. "We need to figure out how to access it without setting off alarms." "Stealth mission," Samara said, her tone both weary and determined. "Just like old times." "Except the stakes are higher," Theo said. "One wrong move and we're space dust." They worked late into the night, piecing together a plan from fragments of alien schematics and educated guesses. It was a long shot, but long shots were their specialty. "Think we can pull this off?" Jax asked, his voice betraying a mix of excitement and fear. "We have to," Theo replied, his resolve firm. "Because if we don't, we're just waiting for the Xel'Naga to decide our fate." Samara looked around at their weary but determined faces, a smile playing on her lips. "When did we become the galaxy's most wanted?" "About the time we decided to not go quietly into the night," Theo said, determination burning in his eyes. "Well then," Samara said, raising an imaginary glass. "Here's to not going quietly." They all echoed her toast, their spirits bolstered by the shared sense of purpose. The stakes were high, but so was their resolve. In a universe that seemed determined to knock them down, they'd stand together, ready to push back. As the station hummed gently around them, Theo knew this was just the beginning. The real fight was only just starting. And if the Xel'Naga had secrets, they were about to find them out, one way or another. The console room hummed with a smug satisfaction, like a cat that had just caught a mouse, or in this case, a human. The silence that had been their ally turned into a mocking echo, amplifying their unease. "Well, that was fun," Samara said, eyeing the data chip like it promised nothing but more headaches. "Who knew we'd be such popular guests?" Theo shot her a half-grin. "Remind me to thank our hosts for the warm reception." "Right after we win the intergalactic lottery," Jax chimed in. "And they hand us the keys to the station." The station didn't take kindly to visitors who overstayed their welcome or poked around where they shouldn't. As they made their cautious retreat, a blaring alarm cut through the atmosphere like an unwelcome exclamation mark to their little field trip. "Looks like someone found out we raided the fridge," Samara quipped, her voice laced with more thrill than fear. "Just the appetizer," Theo replied, his mind racing. "Main course is getting out of here alive." The corridors that had felt like a maze now felt like a trap, one that was closing in fast. Theo's pulse matched the station's frantic pulse. They had to move and move fast. "Plan B?" Jax asked, already readying his trusty multi-tool. "Run and hope we don't become squid chowder," Theo answered, leading them down a less traveled path. "Jax, keep that tool handy. Might need to make a door if we find ourselves walled in." They dashed through the corridor, feet pounding against the organic flooring that squished faintly, as if even the ground mocked their desperation. The walls seemed to lean in, whispering secrets only they could understand. "I swear these walls are laughing at us," Samara muttered. "They're like my mother-in-law." "At least your mother-in-law doesn't have tentacles," Jax replied, a poor attempt at levity that somehow worked. The station's defense systems kicked in, sealing off sections with organic barriers that oozed into place. It was as if the station itself was trying to digest them. "This place is really starting to get on my nerves," Theo growled. "Jax, we need a way through." "Yesterday. On it," Jax replied, already at work. "Just give me a sec to work some magic." Samara kept an eye on their surroundings, her instincts honed from a lifetime of dealing with bad situations. "Let's hope your magic doesn't include pulling a rabbit out of a hat." "Not unless it's a robotic one," Jax shot back, finally prying open a panel with a satisfying hiss. "Ladies and gentlemen, your emergency exit." They scrambled through, ducking into the adjacent passage before the station could change its mind and seal their fate. "Nice work," Theo said, clapping Jax on the back. "Now let's make sure it wasn't for nothing." Their reprieve was short-lived. The station, ever vigilant and apparently holding a grudge, continued its pursuit with mechanical precision. The lights flickered, a prelude to what they knew was coming. "You feel that?" Samara asked, her voice tight with anticipation. "Yeah," Theo said, "like the calm before the storm, or the storm itself deciding it's time for a change." The lights died, plunging them into a darkness so complete it felt like the universe had given up on them entirely. And then came the real storm, a violent shudder rippling through the station, throwing them to the ground. "Great," Samara groaned, picking herself up. "I was just thinking we needed an earthquake drill." Theo snorted, helping Jax to his feet. "Well, now we know where the station's humor lies." "Too bad it's not our brand." The Xel'Naga weren't just known for their penchant for bioengineering. They had a knack for making life hellishly unpredictable, and it seemed today was a good day for unpredictability. "Status," Theo barked, falling back into his role as captain, even if the title felt like a cruel joke. "System failure," Jax replied, his voice tinged with disbelief. "Parts of the station are shutting down. We're cut off." "Perfect," Samara muttered. "Just when I was getting used to being public enemy number one." "The Xel'Naga must be planning something," Theo said, eyeing the dimly lit corridor. "And I'm guessing it's not a welcome home party." The universe had a sense of irony. Here they were, pinballs in an alien arcade game, and the Xel'Naga seemed hell-bent on tilting the table. "Think they've had enough of us?" Jax asked, a hint of gallows humor in his voice. "I think they're just getting started," Samara replied. "And we're the entertainment." "Then let's make sure we're the best damn show they've ever seen," Theo said, moving forward with grim determination. As they navigated the station, it was clear the Xel'Naga were preparing for a final confrontation. The corridors teemed with activity, the station's defenses now fully active. Every step felt like a countdown to their inevitable discovery. Theo's mind raced, searching for a way to turn the tables. They were outmatched, outgunned, and now, it seemed, out of time. "Options?" Samara asked, her tone both resigned and defiant. "Because I'm fresh out of ideas." "Improvise," Theo replied, though he knew the odds were stacked higher than a deck of cheating cards. "And hope the universe is on our side for once." The darkness around them was suffocating, oppressive, as if the station itself was closing in. The walls seemed to whisper, a chorus of alien voices judging them, sentencing them. "Feels like we're in a damn horror movie," Jax muttered. "The kind where no one makes it out alive." Samara flashed a grin, though her eyes were grim. "Well, if we're gonna die, let's at least do it with style." Theo barked a laugh, the sound harsh in the eerie quiet. "Damn right. Let's give them a show to remember." Their journey took them to the heart of the station, a place that felt oddly familiar despite its alien architecture. The hidden node with its secrets and shadows loomed ahead. Whatever the Xel'Naga were hiding, it was here, and so was their last chance. "Here we go," Theo said, steeling himself. "All or nothing." Jax nodded, his fingers dancing over the console like a conductor leading an orchestra. "Let's see if we can't make this baby sing." The station seemed to hold its breath, as if waiting for the inevitable clash. The hidden node pulsed with energy, a heartbeat that matched the urgency of their mission. "Looks like they are ready for us," Samara said, her eyes on the alien symbols that danced across the screen. "Then let's not disappoint," Theo replied, his voice carrying the weight of their situation. The node's defenses were formidable, a testament to the Xel'Naga's paranoia, or perhaps their fear. Theo felt the pressure of time, each second ticking away like a countdown to oblivion. "Got it," Jax exclaimed, his face a mixture of triumph and disbelief. "The system's open." "Then let's see what they're hiding," Samara urged, her eyes alight with determination. The console flared to life, a cascade of information flooding the screen. It was a map, a detailed layout of the station, complete with all the secret paths and hidden chambers they'd suspected. "Looks like we hit the mother lode," Theo said, his heart pounding. "Now we just need to find the exit." The map showed a hidden chamber deep within the station, a place marked with ominous symbols that spoke of danger and desperation. Whatever lay there, it was their only hope. "This is it," Samara said, her voice firm. "One last roll of the dice." "Let's hope luck's on our side," Theo replied, though he knew better than to rely on something as fickle as luck. They moved with purpose, the path clear before them but fraught with danger. The station's defenses were formidable, and the Xel'Naga would not take kindly to their intrusion. As they approached the hidden chamber, the atmosphere changed. The air was thick with tension, the silence heavy with the weight of impending confrontation. "Ready?" Theo asked, his voice steady despite the chaos in his mind. Jax nodded, a steely resolve in his eyes. "Let's do this." Samara grinned, a fierce light in her gaze. "Time to show them what we're made of." The chamber loomed ahead, a dark maw ready to swallow them whole. But it was also their only chance, a final gamble in a game where the stakes were everything. As they stepped into the chamber, the doors closed behind them with a finality that echoed through the station. The Xel'Naga's secrets lay before them, a treasure trove of information that could change everything. But the Xel'Naga were not about to let their secrets go without a fight. The chamber came alive with a blinding light, figures emerging from the shadows, Xel'Naga, their translucent skin glowing with an eerie light. "Well, this just got interesting," Samara said, her voice tinged with both fear and excitement. Theo faced the Xel'Naga, his resolve unshaken. "Let's finish this." The Xel'Naga advanced, their presence a reminder of just how outmatched the humans were. But Theo and his crew were ready, their determination a beacon in the oppressive darkness. In that moment, the universe held its breath, waiting to see who would emerge victorious. And as the chaos unfolded, Theo knew one thing for certain: whatever happened next, they wouldn't go down without a fight. The chamber was a kaleidoscope of alien symbols, pulsating with a life of their own. Theo and his ragtag crew stood there, coated in a thin veneer of sweat and determination. The Xel'Naga, translucent and ethereal, looked like they had just stepped out of a cosmic aquarium. "Anyone else feeling like a fish out of water?" Samara quipped, her eyes darting over the alien figures like a hawk sizing up its prey. "More like the bait," Jax muttered, fiddling with his multi-tool. "But hey, at least we're shiny." Theo felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him like a cosmic boot. The Xel'Naga were sizing them up, probably deciding whether their human guests were worth the trouble of being turned into cosmic mulch. "I've always wanted to know what it's like to be a bug under a microscope," Theo said, trying to lighten the oppressive atmosphere. "Guess today's our lucky day." One of the Xel'Naga stepped forward, its voice smooth and unnaturally calm. "You should not be here," it said, the words slithering out like snakes from a basket. Theo shrugged, doing his best to appear nonchalant. "Yeah, we get that a lot. We're like bad pennies, always turning up." Samara nudged Jax, whispering, "Please tell me you've got something more lethal than witty banter in that tool of yours." Jax grinned, a glint of mischief in his eyes. "Oh, I've got a few tricks up my sleeve, don't worry." The Xel'Naga seemed unfazed by their bravado, its gaze sweeping over them like a cold wind. "Your presence here disrupts the balance," it intoned, as if speaking from an ancient script. "Balance, schmalance," Samara retorted, crossing her arms defiantly. "We're just here to borrow a cup of sugar and maybe not die." Theo could almost hear the universe chuckle at their plight. Here they were, staring down a bunch of overgrown jellyfish, playing a game of cosmic chicken with no idea who'd flinch first. In the middle of this standoff, a flicker of movement caught Theo's eye. A panel on the far wall slid open, revealing a hidden alcove stacked with what looked suspiciously like Xel'Naga tech, a veritable treasure trove of shiny things that promised salvation or destruction, possibly both. "Well, well, what do we have here?" Theo drawled, gesturing towards the alcove. "Leave the door open and someone might just walk in." The Xel'Naga seemed to pause, their translucent forms flickering with indecision. Theo seized the moment, moving cautiously towards the alcove, his heart pounding a rhythm of adrenaline and survival. "Jax, think you can work some magic with whatever that is?" Theo asked, nodding at the alien tech. Jax's eyes lit up like a kid in a candy store. "Oh, I reckon I could make a few improvements," he said, advancing on the tech with the eagerness of a man who just found the Holy Grail, albeit one covered in bioluminescent goo. As Jax set to work, the Xel'Naga remained still, as if weighing their options. Theo couldn't help but feel like they were about to become the stars of their own intergalactic soap opera, one where the set was on fire and the script was written by a sadist. "Hey, Captain," Samara said, her voice low. "You thinking what I'm thinking? If you're thinking about how screwed we are if this doesn't work, then yes," Theo replied, his gaze fixed on Jax's progress. "Yeah, but what's life without a little existential dread?" Samara's grin was wicked, a defiance that mirrored Theo's own. The tension in the room was palpable, a heavy cloak that wrapped itself around them. The Xel'Naga were no longer just alien figures. They were gatekeepers, standing between the humans and whatever slim hope remained. As Jax worked, the tech began to hum with a life of its own. Lights pulsed in sync, casting strange shadows that danced across the chamber walls. Theo watched, feeling the knot of tension in his stomach tighten to a nearly unbearable degree. "All right, Jax, what's the verdict?" Theo called out, his voice echoing in the alien silence. Jax looked up, his face a mask of concentration. I've managed to override some of their systems. We might have a way to communicate with the station, maybe even turn some of its defenses against them. Theo felt a flicker of hope, a rare and dangerous thing in their current predicament. Good. Let's see if we can borrow the keys to this fancy place. The Xel'Naga seemed to shift, an uneasy ripple passing through their ranks. Theo could almost taste the uncertainty in the air, a bitter tang that promised change. "What's the play, Captain?" Samara asked, her eyes locked on the Xel'Naga. Theo squared his shoulders, a grim determination settling over him like armor. "We bluff, we bluster, we bamboozle, and if that doesn't work, we run like hell." Jax tapped a series of commands into the alien console, his fingers flying over the keys like a pianist on a manic symphony. The room shuddered, the hum of machinery rising to a crescendo. Theo cast a sidelong glance at Samara. "Ready for the grand finale," she grinned, a fierce light in her eyes. "Let's give him a show they won't forget." The console erupted with light, a dazzling display that momentarily blinded them. The station seemed to groan, a deep, resonant sound that echoed through the corridors. Theo felt the weight of possibility settle on his shoulders, a precarious, exhilarating balance between disaster and triumph. "Holy shit," Jax breathed, staring at the screen with wide eyes. "I think we just hijacked the station's network." Theo allowed himself a small, victorious smile. "Let's hope it speaks human." As if in response, the station's systems flared to life, a symphony of light and sound that coursed through the walls like a heartbeat. The Xel'Naga recoiled, their forms flickering with indecision. "Looks like we just crashed their party," Samara said, her voice laced with satisfaction. Now," Theo admonished playfully. "We're guests here, remember." The Xel'Naga's leader, Zoreth, stepped forward, its voice tinged with something resembling respect. "You are resourceful humans, perhaps more so than we anticipated." Theo shrugged, doing his best to conceal the gnawing anxiety beneath his nonchalant facade. "We aim to please." "Now how about we talk terms?" The Xel'Naga exchanged glances, a silent conversation passing between them that Theo could only guess at. The station's defenses seemed to relax, the oppressive weight of their presence lifting ever so slightly. "Talk terms?" Jax muttered. "I thought we were more into shouting and running." "SHH," Samara whispered. "Let the captain do his thing." Theo took a step forward, meeting Zoreth's gaze with a steady resolve. "We're not here to cause trouble, just looking for a way back home, maybe with a few souvenirs if you're feeling generous." Zoreth regarded him with an inscrutable expression. "Your intrusion here has complicated matters, but perhaps there is a way forward." Theo's heart skipped a beat. Was it possible they had found an ally or at least someone willing to call a temporary truce? "Go on," Theo prompted, trying not to sound overly eager. "We're all ears." Zoreth's gaze swept over the humans, a calculating look in its eyes. "There is a potential solution, but it requires trust, something difficult to offer under the circumstances." "Trust?" Samara interjected, incredulous. "From what we've seen, your idea of trust involves a lot of tentacles and not much else." Theo shot her a warning glance but couldn't suppress a ghost of a smile. "What she means is, we're open to negotiations." The Xel'Naga leader seemed to consider this, its form shifting like liquid light. "Very well. There may be a way for you to assist us and in doing so secure your passage." Jax raised an eyebrow, his skepticism evident. "Assist you? Sounds like a catch to me." Zoreth's translucent form glowed with a subtle intensity. "There is an entity within the station, one that has become unstable. It threatens the balance and we have been unable to contain it." "Let me guess," Theo drawled. "You want us to play exterminator?" "Precisely," Zoreth replied, unfazed by the sarcasm. "In exchange for your cooperation, we will grant you safe passage and access to our technology." Samara snorted, her expression a mix of amusement and disbelief. "So, what? We go in guns blazing, clean up your mess, and then what?" "Shake hands and part as friends." Theo considered the proposition, weighing their precarious situation against the promise of a potential alliance. The station's defenses were formidable, but if they could turn its systems to their advantage, they might stand a chance. "You've got yourself a deal," Theo said, extending a hand, a gesture of goodwill in a galaxy that had little room for it. "But know this, if you double-cross us, we'll take this place down with us." Zoreth inclined its head, a gesture that felt reassuringly diplomatic. "Agreed. Let us hope it does not come to that." As they turned to leave, Samara leaned in close to Theo, her voice low. "You think they're serious about letting us go?" Theo met her gaze, a wry smile tugging at his lips. "No idea. But it's the best shot we've got." Jax chuckled, shaking his head. "Well, I always wanted to be a hero. Guess I should have been more specific." Theo clapped him on the back, a camaraderie forged in the crucible of desperation and mutual insanity. "Welcome to the club. Let's just hope this ends with a standing ovation rather than a funeral dirge." As they made their way back through the station, a new sense of purpose infused their steps. The odds were stacked against them, and the universe was as indifferent as ever, but there was a glimmer of something that might just be hope. "Guess we're not dead yet," Samara said, her tone a mix of surprise and relief. Theo smirked, the weight of their mission settling on him once more. "No, not yet, but let's see if we can't keep it that way." With the Xelnaga's tentative alliance dangling before them like a carrot on a precarious stick, they marched forward, ready to face whatever fresh hell awaited them within the station's bowels. "Here's to not dying today," Jax said, raising an imaginary glass. "Cheers to that," Theo replied, his voice carrying a defiant note of optimism. As they delved deeper into the station, their path illuminated by the flickering lights, Theo couldn't help but feel they were on the edge of something monumental, a breakthrough that could tip the balance in their favor. For the first time in what felt like forever, they had a plan, a purpose, and maybe, just maybe, a chance of making it out alive. In the depths of the living station, the humans strode forward, their resolve burning bright against the encroaching dark. Whatever the future held, they were ready to face it together, with snark, sarcasm, and a stubborn refusal to go quietly into that good night. The Etherian was a living nightmare of organic walls and pulsing bioluminescent veins that defied all principles of good interior design. It was as if a particularly tasteless squid had thrown up an acid trip and called it art. Theo Hargrove, captain of the Hopeful Despair certainly felt like he'd entered a cosmic circus. And given the Xelnaga's penchant for tentacles and inscrutable motives, it wasn't too far off. "All right," Theo said, his voice carrying the weight of someone who had finally accepted his role as a reluctant hero in an existential drama. "We've got to deal with the squid overlords, and now it's time to deliver. Jax, you've got the station's systems under control, yeah?" Jax, still fiddling with his multi-tool like it was the holy grail of his sanity, nodded. "As much as you can control a sentient pile of spaghetti, sure." Samara Voss, ever the voice of deadpan realism, snorted. "Our plan is to piss off an unstable entity by hacking its home. What could possibly go wrong?" "You've got to admit," Theo replied, trying to keep his tone light even as the gravity of their situation settled like an elephant on a beanbag, "this would make one hell of a memoir. How I stopped worrying and loved the living station. More like how I learned to hate everything," Samara muttered, her eyes scanning the corridor for any signs of impending doom. "But hey, I'm all for burning bridges if it means we can toast marshmallows on the way out." With the Xelnaga temporarily on their side, or at least not actively trying to disintegrate them, the humans had a narrow window to destabilize the station's controls. Their mission was a delicate dance on a blade's edge, and Theo was all too aware that one misstep could send them plummeting into the void. Still, if there was one thing humans excelled at, it was causing chaos in the name of survival. As they made their way through the station's intestines, Jax worked his magic on the alien tech, coaxing it to do things its creators had never intended, or at least, Theo hoped they hadn't. The walls seemed to pulse in rhythm with the station's heartbeat, a living entity that was less welcoming host and more reluctant ally. "Okay," Jack said, breaking the tense silence. "I've rerouted some of the power systems. Should destabilize the controls enough to give us a fighting chance." Theo nodded. "Good. Let's make sure this unstable entity has a real existential crisis. We do this right, and we'll be sipping synthetic cocktails on Earth's ruined beaches in no time." "Sounds like a party," Samara said dryly. "Assuming we don't end up as squid food first." The corridor opened into a vast chamber, a cathedral of alien technology that hummed with dangerous energy. Kaleidoscopic patterns played across the walls, illuminated by the eerie glow of the station's core. It was both beautiful and terrifying, like a cosmic art piece that dared you to touch it, right before it incinerated you. Zoreth, the Zelnaga leader, awaited them with an air of calculated patience. Its translucent skin shimmered like an oil slick, and Theo found himself wondering if the alien ever got bored of its own grandeur. "You humans are about to embark on a path fraught with peril," Zoreth intoned, voice as smooth and inscrutable as ever. "The entity within these walls is unpredictable. It may not yield easily." "Great," Samara said, her sarcasm cutting through the air like a razor. "I love a good death march. Really gets the blood pumping." Theo shot her a look that said, maybe not antagonize the squid overlord, but couldn't help the twitch of a smile. He turned back to Zoreth. "We've dealt with unpredictable before. Just point us in the right direction, and we'll do what we do best: improvise." Zoreth inclined its head slightly, a gesture that might have passed for approval. "The core of the entity lies beyond this chamber. Disrupting its connection to the station will destabilize its influence." "Translation," Jack said, checking his multi-tool with the air of a man examining a particularly volatile explosive. "We kick it in the metaphysical nuts and hope it doesn't kick back harder." "Something like that," Theo agreed. He adjusted his grip on his sidearm, though he doubted it would be much use against a sentient station with a bad attitude. As they approached the core, the air grew thick with tension, and maybe a hint of ozone. Theo felt the familiar rush of adrenaline, that intoxicating blend of fear and exhilaration that came with the territory of doing something incredibly stupid for a slim chance of survival. The entity's core was a swirling vortex of energy, a maelstrom of light and shadow that defied conventional physics. It pulsated with a malevolence that was almost palpable, as if daring them to come closer. Theo could sense its awareness, a sentient, malevolent presence that seemed to regard them with curiosity and maybe a hint of amusement. "Okay, team," Theo said, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. "Time to dance with the devil." "Jax, you know what to do." Jax nodded, a determined glint in his eyes as he approached the console. His fingers danced across the controls, coaxing the alien systems to bend to his will. The station seemed to shudder in response, its luminescent veins flickering erratically. Theo watched the display, his heart pounding in time with the station's heartbeat. "How's it looking?" "Like I'm trying to play chess with a rabid octopus," Jax replied through gritted teeth. "But I think I've got it. Just need a little more time." Samara kept her gaze on the core, her expression unreadable. "Let's hope this thing doesn't decide to throw a tantrum before we're done." As if in response, the core flared, a blinding surge of energy that sent shockwaves through the chamber. Theo staggered, catching himself against the console as the station roared in protest. "Hold it together," Theo shouted, gripping the edge of the console as if his life depended on it, because it probably did. "Captain, I'm doing my best," Jax shouted back, his focus unwavering despite the chaos around them. Just one more minute. The station seemed to writhe in agony, its walls twisting and contorting as if trying to shake them off like a particularly annoying itch. The air crackled with energy, and Theo could almost feel the entity's fury, a primal force that defied comprehension. "Jax, now would be a really good time to work your magic," Samara urged, her voice tight with urgency. "Almost there," Jax replied, his fingers flying over the controls with desperate precision. With a final flourish, Jax completed the sequence, and the core shuddered violently before collapsing in on itself, its light flickering and fading into darkness. The station's roar subsided into a low, ominous hum, the entity's grip loosening like a fist unclenching. Theo let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Did it work? Jax grinned, his relief palpable. Let's just say the station's got a hell of a headache. We've severed its connection, at least temporarily. A triumphant sense of disbelief washed over Theo, tempered by the knowledge that their victory, however significant, was precarious. Well, I'll be damned. Maybe we should have tried making friends with sentient stations sooner. Zoreth observed them with a look that might have been admiration or perhaps just bemusement. You have succeeded where we could not. The entity is subdued and its influence over the station diminished. For now. Samara smirked, her relief evident beneath her usual sarcasm. Looks like we're not just good at getting into trouble. We're pretty decent at getting out of it, too. Theo nodded, the weight of their accomplishment settling over him even as the reality of their ongoing struggle loomed large. Let's get back to the ship and see if we can't cash in on that deal. As they made their way back through the station's organic corridors, Theo couldn't shake the feeling that their luck had finally turned. The Xel'Naga had offered them a chance at survival and perhaps even a new beginning. "Hey, Captain," Samara said, glancing over at him as they walked. "Think we've earned a break after all this?" "Only if by break you mean more chaotic adventures," Theo replied with a wry smile. "But yeah, I think we've earned a little downtime." Jax chuckled, his usual mischief returning now that the immediate danger had passed. "I hear Earth's beaches are lovely this time of post-apocalypse," Theo laughed, the sound carrying a note of genuine hope. "Maybe we'll get a chance to find out." As they approached the docking bay, Theo felt a renewed sense of purpose. They had faced the unknown and emerged victorious, if only for a moment. And in a universe that thrived on uncertainty, that moment was everything. With the Xel'Naga's tentative alliance secured and the station's defenses compromised, Theo and his crew had bought themselves a chance to return to their ship and chart a new course, one that might just lead them home. And so, with sarcastic banter and cautious optimism, they continued their journey through the cosmos, ready to face whatever new challenges awaited them on the horizon. Because if there was one thing Theo Hargrove and his crew knew how to do, it was survive against all odds. And maybe, just maybe, they'd even enjoy the ride. As Theo Hargrove and his ragtag crew shuffled back to the hopeful despair, the absurdity of their situation hit him like a wayward asteroid. They just strong-armed a sentient space station into submission using nothing more than human stubbornness, a few dirty tricks, and a healthy disregard for self-preservation. "Well, that was fun," Samara drawled, her sarcasm thicker than a neutron star. "Nothing like threatening cosmic annihilation to liven up the day." Theo chuckled, running a hand through his unkempt hair. Who knew picking a fight with the universe could be so satisfying? "So what's next?" "A leisurely stroll through a black hole." Jax, still fiddling with his multi-tool as if it were the key to the galaxy, smirked. "I dunno, Captain. I'm getting kinda used to these high stakes. Makes regular life feel like sipping tea with Aunt Mildred." Theo stopped in his tracks, glancing back at the station's organic corridors, now pulsing with the dull glow of a creature with a cosmic hangover. "Speaking of high stakes, we still have to negotiate our way out of this mess with the Xel'Naga. They're not exactly known for their generosity. Or their sense of humor," Samara added, rolling her eyes. "I doubt they are going to be handing out participation trophies." As if summoned by their collective cynicism, Zoreth materialized from the shadows, its translucent skin shimmering like an oil slick left out in the rain. "Humans, your tenacity is unexpected. The station's power is subdued, but this changes the dynamic between our species." Theo crossed his arms, adopting the posture of someone who might have a plan or at least a bluff worth trying. Look, Zoreth, let's cut to the chase. We need a place to stay, and your station looks like it could use some tenants who appreciate chaos. Zoreth tilted its head, a gesture that seemed to convey a mix of amusement and suspicion. You propose a symbiotic relationship, Captain. Theo shrugged, trying to appear nonchalant. More like mutually assured survival. We keep your station from going all annihilate everything in sight, and you give us a patch of space to call home. Samara glanced at Theo, her expression a mixture of dubiousness and admiration. You sure know how to sweet-talk a squid overlord. Zoreth considered this for a moment, its alien eyes fixed on Theo with an intensity that bordered on unsettling. Very well. The station can accommodate your kind, though your presence will require certain adjustments. Adjustments? Jax asked, raising an eyebrow. You mean more than just redecorating the place with our charming human flair? There will be restrictions to ensure the station's integrity, Zoreth replied smoothly. Certain areas will remain off-limits and you must abide by our protocols. Theo nodded, understanding the delicate balance they'd need to maintain. We can work with that, but in return we need assurances. Rights to resources, tech sharing, the whole intergalactic works. Zoreth's skin shimmered again, possibly an indication of approval, or maybe just an alien version of a shrug. Agreed. Our species will benefit from the exchange of ideas. Exchange of ideas, Samara muttered, voice dripping with sarcasm. More like we'll make it up as we go along. Theo ignored her for the moment, focusing on the task at hand. They'd managed to carve out a tenuous future amid the chaos, but he knew better than to get too comfortable. All right, Zoreth. Let's seal the deal before the station decides it's had enough of our human nonsense. The alien leader nodded, and with a gesture, the walls of the station seemed to pulse with new life, acknowledging their unorthodox alliance. The humans had carved out a niche in the galaxy's chaos, a small victory against overwhelming odds. Looks like we've got ourselves a new home, Jax said, a grin spreading across his face. Who knew playing with alien tech could have such perks? Theo clapped him on the back, feeling some of the tension drain away. Don't get too comfortable. I have a feeling this is just the beginning. As they made their way back to the ship, the crew's mood lifted, buoyed by the prospect of survival and the chance to redefine their future on their terms. The hopeful despair might have been a battered refugee ship, but it was theirs, and that counted for something in a universe that seemed hell-bent on grinding them down. So, what now, fearless leader? Samara asked, her tone half-mocking, half-genuine. Theo considered the question, his gaze drifting to the stars beyond the station. Now we figure out how to make the most of this mess. Build a community, maybe even a future. And if the universe decides to throw another curveball our way, well, we'll improvise. Jax held up his multi-tool, spinning it between his fingers with the ease of a man who just hacked an alien supercomputer. Whatever happens, at least we're in good company. Theo smiled, feeling a rare sense of optimism. Damn right. We've got a hell of a crew, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. As they boarded the hopeful despair, the familiar sounds and smells of their ship welcomed them back. It was a tin can in space, but it was home, and in the grand scheme of things, that was enough. Inside the control room, surrounded by blinking lights and the soft hum of machinery, Theo felt a sense of calm. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, it felt like something worth fighting for. All right, folks, he said, taking his place at the helm. Let's see where this new chapter takes us, and if it gets too quiet, we can always find another station to piss off. Laughter rippled through the room, the sound a welcome balm against the backdrop of cosmic chaos. They'd faced the unknown and emerged on the other side, scarred but unbroken. As the hopeful despair powered up, ready to explore the new possibilities their alliance with the Xel'Naga offered, Theo's thoughts turned to Earth. A part of him longed for the familiar sights and sounds of home, but he knew better than to dwell on what was lost. Instead, he embraced the chance to carve out a future among the stars, guided by the knowledge that if they could survive this, they could survive anything. With their new alliance secured, the balance of power in the galaxy shifted ever so slightly in their favor. "Hey, Captain," Samara called, her voice laced with genuine curiosity. "Think we'll ever make it back to Earth?" Theo paused, considering her question with the weight it deserved. "Maybe. Maybe not," he said with a shrug. "But wherever we end up, you can bet it'll be one hell of a ride." The crew settled into their routines, each member contributing to the shared goal of survival and adaptation. They might have been outcasts, but together they formed something stronger, a testament to the indomitable human spirit, unyielding even in the face of overwhelming odds. As the hopeful despair navigated the vastness of space, Theo felt a flicker of hope, fragile but persistent. They'd carved out a place for themselves in the galaxy's chaos, and come hell or high water, they'd make it their own. "Let's get to work," Theo said, his voice steady and sure. "And remember, no matter what happens, we're in this together." With that, the crew set to the task of building their future, guided by the knowledge that in a universe fraught with danger and uncertainty, they had found a way to survive and maybe even thrive. And in the grand cosmic scheme of things, that was more than enough.